I arrived at my parents' house while they were yelling at my 6-year-old daughter. Wash the dishes well, useless. I always knew my parents never really accepted my daughter, but that day proved just how cruel they could be. I'm 34, single, and my life revolves around my daughter. I adopted her when she was just 2. From the moment I held her tiny hand, I promised she'd never feel alone again. But my parents, they hated that she wasn't blood. They always said, "Why? Didn't you just have a real child?" I ignored it for years. I paid their mortgage, their bills, because that's what a good daughter does, right? I thought they'd learn to love her. I was so wrong. One day, I had an important meeting, so I left my daughter with them. She was so excited. Her little pink backpack, her shy smile. "I'm going to play with my cousins, Mommy," she said. When I came back that night, I heard shouting before I even stepped inside. "Wash those dishes well, you useless girl." My mother's voice. I froze. Then I heard giggles. My nieces. I pushed the door open. My heart cracked. There she was, my 6-year-old, standing on a wooden box at the sink, tiny hands scrubbing a plate bigger than her head. Her face was red, tears mixed with soap bubbles. My nieces were laughing, waving their new dolls. My parents towered over my daughter, barking orders like she was a maid. "What is this?" I screamed. She turned, eyes wide, and ran to me. Her small, wet hands gripped my shirt. "Mommy, I'm sorry. I don't know how to wash them good." My mother shrugged. "Don't be dramatic. We're teaching her to help." I couldn't believe it. Help? She's 6. She should be playing, not serving your precious granddaughters. Then my father, always so cold, looked me dead in the eyes. "She's not blood. It's not the same. It felt like someone stabbed me. Not the same." So all these years, the fake smiles, the forced hugs, lies, I grabbed my daughter's backpack, lifted her in my arms, and walked out while my mother screamed behind me. I didn't look back. That night, my daughter asked me, "Mommy, why don't Grandma and Grandpa love me?" I didn't know how to explain hate to a 6-year-old, so I tucked her in, kissed her forehead, and did the only thing I could. I cut my parents off. I called the bank and stopped paying for their house. Let them figure it out. Weeks later, they called begging, "Please pay the mortgage. We'll lose the house." I asked them one thing. "Did you ever think about what you did to her?" They said, "It wasn't a big deal. She needs to be useful." Useful? My baby is not your maid. When they lost the house, my sister called me screaming. "How could you do this? They're our parents." I said, "If you care so much, you help them. I'm done." A month later, they showed up at my door. Wrinkled clothes, fake tears. "We have nowhere to go. Please, just until we find something." I looked at my daughter curled up on the couch, finally laughing at her cartoon. I turned back to my parents. "You chose to humiliate her. You chose to call her useless. You don't get to be in her home now. You're not welcome here." I slammed the door in. Their faces is behind me. My daughter whispered, "Mommy, are you okay?" I hugged her tight, breathing in her warmth. That night, after I closed the door on my parents for what felt like the last time, I sat beside my daughter on the couch, holding her close. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me, but I knew one thing clearly. I would never let anyone make her feel unwanted again. She was mine, my heart, my family. The days that followed were quiet but full. Quiet because the chaos of my parents' absence left an echoing silence, and full because my daughter and I began to rebuild our world together, without shadows hanging over us. We declared our little apartment our safe haven. I made a promise to myself that my daughter's home would be filled with laughter, encouragement, and love, never cruelty or rejection. Every morning, I watched her bloom a little more. She started singing again, bright and loud, no longer hiding her voice to avoid scolding. She danced around the living room with her favorite dolls, not needing approval, but freely expressing joy. Our relationship deepened in a way I hadn't dared to imagine. We were no longer just mother and daughter. We became each other's fiercest protectors. I found strength I didn't know I had, steadfast in standing against those who failed her, determined to shield her from the pain that had almost stolen. her innocence. When my sister called, furious, accusing me of tearing the family apart, I stood firm. "This isn't about family loyalty," I said. "It's about love, respect, and knowing when to walk away to protect those you truly care about." I knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. My parents might never understand the damage they caused, or ask for the forgiveness they must earn. But that was their burden to carry, not mine or my daughter's. Together, we started new traditions: movie nights, baking sessions, bedtime stories I wrote myself. We created memories not shadowed by rejection, but filled with hope, resilience, and the promise that love, real love, never demands you be small or silent. One evening, as I tucked her into bed, she smiled sleepily and said, "Mommy, I love you. Thank you for being my family." I kissed her forehead and whispered, "You're everything to me, baby. Forever and always." And in that moment, I realized that despite all the pain, the hardest choices had led us here, to a home where love was the only rule and where we both could finally breathe free. Story 2. At my fiancé's med college graduation party in LA, funded by my life savings of $275,000 and $8,000 per semester, she told security loud enough for me to hear, "I don't know him. Please make him leave my private event." Her mother laughed out loud. "I guess the wedding's off, huh?" I didn't argue. Smiled, left without a scene, and made a revenge plan. She'd regret. Chapter 1. The price of her dreams. I still remember the first time Alyssa talked about becoming a doctor. We were both 19, me working doubles at my dad's auto shop, her balancing pre-med classes and 2 waitress jobs. One day, she said, "I'll make it." And I promise I'll never forget who helped me get there. I believed her. Over the next 8 years, I funneled everything I had into her dream. Every penny I earned, $275,000 in total, plus another $8,000 every semester for books, scrubs, board prep classes, living expenses, went into helping her get through med school. No vacations, no new truck, no eating out. I even took a night job as a rideshare driver just to cover her MCAT prep. She always promised she'd pay me back emotionally, not just financially. When I'm Dr. Alyssa Grant, she'd say, "You'll be right." Beside me, "I'll never let anyone forget what you did." Turns out that was true. Just not in the way I expected. The day of her graduation, she barely acknowledged me during the ceremony. I figured she was nervous, overwhelmed by it all. But that night, at the fancy rooftop party in downtown LA, the one I paid for in full, I got my answer. I showed up in a clean button-down and slacks, holding the custom bracelet I'd had made for her, engraved with her initials and our graduation date. But as soon as I approached the entrance, 2 large security guards blocked me. Before I could say anything, I heard her voice behind them loud and clear. "I don't know him. Please make him leave my private event." Just like that. No hesitation, no shame. Her mother laughed so hard she nearly choked on her champagne. "I guess the wedding's off, huh?" Everyone around them chuckled, nodded, whispered. I didn't move. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because in that exact moment, I saw it all so clearly. This wasn't just a breakup. This was a power move, a betrayal years in the making. So I did the last thing she expected. I smiled and I left without a scene, without a word. But in my mind, I was already making a plan she'd never forget. Chapter 2. The strings I still controlled. The night after the party, I sat alone in my apartment. 1 bedroom, modest, quiet, no noise, no congratulations, no champagne toasts, just me and a folder labeled receipts. Because while Alyssa had spent years becoming a doctor, I'd quietly learned the power of documentation. See, every transfer I made to her, every tuition payment, every Amazon textbook, every monthly wire to her landlord in Westwood, I logged it all. Even the $8,000 checks I sent each semester were tagged with memos like fall tuition, Alyssa Grant. Why? Because deep down, I always feared this day would come. She thought the money was a gift, but it was never presented as one. Legally, they were loans, every dollar of it. And the best part, she signed for many of them sloppily, carelessly, but signed nonetheless. I emailed a friend of mine from college who now worked for a prominent civil litigation firm. He owed me a favor. I helped him rebuild his car after a wreck, no charge. He replied instantly, "We can sue her. Breach of contract, fraud, emotional damages if you're up for it. And if she tries to play victim, we'll bury her with receipts." Perfect. But that was just part one. Part two. She had no idea that the wedding venue booked months earlier was still in my name. And while I'd quietly canned the florist and photographer 2 weeks ago when she started going distant, I hadn't canceled the reception hall yet. Instead, I emailed the venue manager and made a small adjustment. Convert this reservation from Alyssa. Grant's wedding reception to the Eric Foundation annual banquet. Keep the date and caterer. Add a projector. Add 100 copies of a presentation I'll be delivering that night. He agreed without hesitation. It was going to be one hell of a banquet. Chapter 3. The Doctor's Celebration. Hijacked. 2 weeks later, the evening of the banquet arrived. The upscale Westside Hotel buzzed with activity. The lobby was elegantly decorated, the ballroom adorned with fresh arrangements, and guests, mostly my former colleagues, investors, and mutual friends, arrived dressed in formal wear, confused but curious. The invitations had said, "The Eric Foundation presents Trust, Betrayal, and $275,000, a real-life case study." At the front of the ballroom, a projector was already casting the title slide on a massive screen. People murmured, trying to understand what this was all about. And then, precisely at $7 p.m., I stepped onto the stage, calm, composed, wearing the same navy suit I'd planned to wear on what was supposed to be my wedding day. I picked up the mic and said, "Good evening. Thank you for coming. Tonight, you'll hear about a 7-year relationship, a love story that was supposed to end in a wedding, but instead ended in betrayal. The story you're about to witness is real. The documents are real. The screenshots, the wire transfers, the audio clips, all real." A silence fell over the crowd. Then I clicked the remote, and the presentation began. Slide 1. Photos of Alyssa and me through the years, smiling, traveling, studying. Slide 2. Tuition payments with dates and signed receipts. Slide 3. A wire transfer labeled Wedding Venue Deposit, Alyssa plus Eric. Slide 4. A screenshot of a WhatsApp message from Alyssa to her best friend. "I'm only with him until med school is over. Then I'm done. He's sweet, but too safe. Not my type." Gasps filled the room. Slide 5. The video taken from a discreet camera I placed in my jacket. Pocket of the moment security escorted me out of the graduation party. Slide 6. My voice recorded the next morning. "Congratulations, doctor. You're no longer my fiancé, but you are now officially the subject of a civil lawsuit and a National Ethics Board complaint. I hope your new boyfriend is good at paperwork." And then I closed with, "Thank you for attending tonight's lesson. May it serve as a reminder to choose partners who value more than just your wallet." I bowed. The room erupted into stunned applause. But the night wasn't over yet, because as I stepped off the stage, I received a flurry of texts from her. "What did you do? You ruined my life. I'm getting calls from the hospital board. You psycho." I put my phone on silent and took a sip of Vi. Champagne. Let the next phase begin. Chapter 4. The Board Review and the Backlash. 2 days after the presentation, the consequences came crashing down on Alyssa like a tsunami. Her dream residency at Cedars-Sinai revoked. Why? Because I didn't just stop at public humiliation. Before the banquet, I had compiled a detailed report complete with timestamps, messages, recordings, and bank transaction histories. I had submitted it to the California Medical Board, the Hospital Ethics Committee, and most importantly, the residency program director. I didn't accuse her of fraud out of vengeance. I laid out evidence that she had used funds under false pretenses, had engaged in academic dishonesty by submitting personal essays ghostwritten by others. I had the Google Docs, logs to prove it, and had breached ethical trust as a medical professional in training. Within 48 hours, I received this short email. "Thank you for your submission. The matter has been escalated. You may be contacted as a material witness during our ethics review." I didn't need to be contacted because her reputation was already collapsing. On LinkedIn, her profile vanished. On Instagram, she disabled comments and deleted every photo of her in a lab coat. And her new boyfriend, the orthopedic resident she'd been seeing behind my back, he bailed the moment he realized he was caught in the crossfire. Meanwhile, on my end, remember that $275,000? I had receipts, literally, and I had already filed a civil suit for fraudulent misappropriation of funds backed by contracts, wire documentation, and proof that we were not legally married, meaning she had no claim to that money beyond what was proven as a gift. Spoiler, barely any of it was. I froze all joint accounts, contacted my bank's fraud department, and even had my legal team issue a cease and desist to her mother, who had bragged that the idiot paid for everything. A week later, I got a call from her attorney. "Mr. Reynolds, what would it take for you to settle quietly?" I chuckled. "Tell Alyssa to ask me in person. I'd love to hear her apology." He paused. "That's unlikely. Then so is a settlement." Click. And the best part? That banquet, the one she mocked me at for being pathetic and small time, it went viral. A clip of my final speech was uploaded to YouTube anonymously. Wink, entitled, "He funded her med school, she dumped him." So he did this. It hit 4 million views in 2 days. Sponsors started reaching out to me. A podcast host invited me for an interview, and my small consulting firm booked solid for the next 6 months. Chapter 5. The courtroom in the collapse. The courthouse was packed, not with reporters. This wasn't that kind of case, but with the quiet murmurs of people watching two very different lives collide. Mine built on perseverance and quiet dignity. Hers, a crumbling tower of arrogance and entitlement. Alyssa walked in flanked by her attorney, dressed in conservative gray, trying hard to look like the victim. But even under the makeup, I could see the panic. Her eyes scanned the room for sympathy. She found none. I sat with my legal counsel, calm, collected, not even looking her way. I didn't need to. The stack of evidence in front of my lawyer did all the talking for me. Bank transfers, chat logs, email threads, where she bragged to her friends about how easy it is to drain a guy when he's in love. Footage from the banquet and the kicker, receipts showing I'd paid for every semester with a clause stating contingent on marriage. There was no marriage. There would never be a marriage. My lawyer stood and opened with quiet force. "Your Honor, this is not merely a matter of funds exchanged between partners. This is a calculated pattern of emotional manipulation and financial deception carried out under the guise of love, culminating in a public and humiliating betrayal that reveals the true intent all along: exploitation." Alyssa's attorney countered, weakly claiming the funds were gifts. My lawyer nodded. And yet we have this message dated June 4th last year, in which the defendant said, and I quote, "As long as he thinks we're still together, I don't have to worry about rent or tuition." The judge raised his eyebrows. Alyssa buried her face in her hands. The verdict. The ruling wasn't just in my favor, it was devastating. $275,000 to be repaid in full. $50,000 in damages for emotional distress and defamation, garnished wages for a decade if needed, and a permanent black mark on her professional record due to her actions being tied to academic fraud and ethical violations. The moment the gavel came down, her face twisted, all the smugness from the party gone. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just sat there, empty. Her mother, sitting 2 rows back, whispered something under her breath and walked out without looking back. Outside the courthouse, I walked, out into the sunlight. Not as the guy she humiliated, but as the man who built his life back stronger, sharper, and untouchable. And when I checked my phone, an email from a publisher. "We'd love to hear more about your story. Are you open to writing a book?" I smiled because sometimes the best revenge is living well and letting the whole world watch. Epilogue full circle. Years later, I stood on a stage in New York City, adjusting the mic before a packed audience. My memoir, Burned Then Built, had just hit the bestseller list. The book wasn't just about the betrayal. It was about rebuilding, about recognizing your own worth even after being torn apart by someone you trusted. About how revenge doesn't always come with fire. Sometimes, it comes with calm, precise justice and the kind of success they can only watch from a distance. In the front row sat my new fiancé, a surgeon, brilliant, grounded, the kind of woman who stood beside me, not on top of me. After the event, as we greeted attendees, a familiar voice behind me stammered, "Mark." I turned. Alyssa. She looked nothing like the woman who once laughed behind my back. She looked worn. Her smile was small, uncertain. "I read your book," she said. "You really turned it all around." I nodded politely. "Yes, I did." She hesitated. "Would you ever want to grab coffee sometime? Just talk." I didn't answer right away. I looked at my fiancé, who gently squeezed my hand. Then I turned back to Alyssa and said the simplest words I'd been saving for years. "No, thank you." And we walked away toward the future, leaving her behind, lost in the ruins of what could have been. Sometimes closure isn't about saying the perfect thing, it's about not needing to say anything at all. Was this revenge perfectly justified? Tell us what you think about this story in the comments below. Like the story. If you think this story is justified, share it with someone who needs this energy, and subscribe to Revenge Exposed for more jaw-dropping tales of betrayal and justice. Because here, every lie has its reckoning, and every betrayal finds its shadow. Stay sharp, stay strong, and stay tuned.